Beep beep, what is up ninjas? My name is Samworld and this is the complete guide to master Spire. Today we are going to be looking at the effects section, which will include the shaper, the phaser, the chorus, delay, and the reverb. So in this section we're going to be learning what these effects do and how to program them and what each knob does. Now we've talked about the oscillators and the filters, so let's get straight into this, guys. The first effect we're going to have here, and the first effect we have in the signal flow of things, in the way things are routed, is the shaper, aka the distortion. The distortion, you're going to have various different types in here, and all the knobs are going to do essentially the same exact thing. So I'm just going to explain it with one hard distortion, and then from there you can kind of get a feel for all the types of distortion Spire offers. When you're working on sounds, you know, make sure that you experiment with different types of sounds going through these distortions because they might affect them differently. Now going into this, what I'm going to do is put the dry and wet all the way up and increase drive. If we put a sine, you know, there we have a fairly standard subby sine with a little bit more harmonics added to it. So that's what distortion's doing, guys. Distortion is adding saturation to a sound, but overdone. Pretty much it's like someone went crazy with it. I always like to tell this story to my students, and it's like saturation is... it was created, in my opinion, like I haven't read about its upbringings, but in my opinion, it was created because some guy decided to push one of the channels in a mixer in an analog circuit, and that sounded nice. When it clips in analog, it tends to round off, while in digital world we kind of square off. That's why it's not really commendable or recommended that you clip in digital, because it squares off. But in analog it tends to round off, which tends to give a very pleasing sound to whatever you have running through it. So that's where this whole idea of saturation comes from, and then we have distortion that is just that overdone to a crazy amounts. So that's where the drive comes from. You're driving that up. Now the bit rate, you know, the bit here is going to control the bit rate, lowers quality of it a bit. So if you're looking for those type of sounds, this is the knob for you. And then sample rate does exactly the same thing, except it's the sample rate. Less quality reduction, as you can see there. Now right below that we're gonna have a low cut and a high cut, and that's gonna do with the distortion itself. So as you can see, since we have this dry and wet up all the way, the low cut is actually cutting most of the sound. But if you have it halfway, it will just do it on the distortion itself. So let's say that you have a sound like a bass that you're making for, let's say, I don't know, let's say a house song where you don't really want high frequencies in it, but you still want some body distortion to it. Then you would use a high cut and get rid of that and just keep whatever you do want, like for instance there. And then a bit of low cut to accentuate that distortion to a certain spot. And remember, this is only doing it to the distortion itself, not the sound. So if we have the dry and wet up all the way up and we cut everything, we're just gonna hear the original bayan almost, as you can see there. So there's not much of a change. Now the band here is gonna make it so it's kind of like a band pass. So the only thing you're gonna hear from the distortion is anything in between the high cut and the low cut. So it's kind of like you create a bandpass in a way. Very cool there. And that's the distortion section. There's not much to it, guys. You know, just experiment with sounds, experiment with the shape of a sound to get a feel for these guys. But very simply, that's all we're doing there. It's adding harmonic frequencies to overdoing it. But that's how distortion has always came to be. The next one we have is the phaser, which is a very frequency-based effect. It sounds like somebody is taking an EQ with a high resonance and moving left and forth. You're going to have 5-6 different stages of phasers, so that's going to be in the way they sound. With the frequency, you're going to choose the frequency that the phaser revolves around. With the rate is how fast it's doing it at, and the depth, think of it as a dry and wet as well. And then the feedback, you can kind of hear a little bit more. Spread is going to be pretty much the wideness of the effect. So let's try 2. There we go. That's more of a phaser. We have 2 of them. 3, 4 phasers, 5, and we have 6. With frequency knob, we can control where it revolves around. The rate controls the speed. So low rates will give you this sound. Feedback, think of it as the volume for that sound. High feedbacks, you'll fucking hear like the wheom, all that phaser sound that you know. And the depth is like another dry and wet knob. You want to think of it. The depth of the effect works in conjunction with the feedback. Pre, it just has to do with the signal flow of things. And then finally we have the vowel low, the mid, and the high, which are meant to be there to create very Foreman type sounds. Let's put some distortion. Now, here what the pre does is the signal flow of things, as I've stated, but it makes it so that it starts in the chain rather than having it be in front of the shaper. So that's what the pre does there. Remember the depth, the rate, the frequency you want to set it at, mid. So that's how the phaser is really going to work. And the spread is just, if you want the phaser effect, the whoa, 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 to be on the sides of the mix or in mono. Very simple there, but that's going to be the phaser, and it's cool to use on certain sounds that you want to add kind of change over time to them. Now, the next one we have is the chorus, guys, and the chorus effect, you know, chorus will turn any mono sound into stereo in a way if you let it. Best way to explain it, you grab the signal, you make a duplicate of it, and then you just modulate it. Best way to explain it. So we put, you know, high, dry, and wet, and we increase the delay on the second sound. Give it feedback. You start to get stereo, increase the wideness. The rate, you're modulating it now. So it sounds sort of like a detunement if you think about it. So you can see there the delay controls how separated they are. The delayed, like that sound we got, how delayed is it? The rate modulates it, and we have 6 different types of it. So we can choose, and they're all gonna sound different. Give the sound a bit of release and attack, and you'll get a very nice synthwave type of sound. So feedback here controls the volume of the effect. You know, that very high feedback tends to give you that nasty, you know, it's making the chorus effect a lot more in your face. It makes it just sound insinuated more, like it's like someone increased the volume on it. At very high rates though, you can get really cool kind of vibes, like for instance, kind of like a metallic feel for it. And if you kind of realize, it sounds sort of similar to the experimental filters found inside of Serum. And that's because Serum filters, the combs and all those, the flangers, the phasers, that's what it's mimicking, this effect here. So with the chorus, guys, we're going to have the depth, which again, works in conjunction with feedback. How apparent is the effect? I kind of see it always like another dry and wet knob though. And the higher it is, the more apparent the effect is going to be. The wide is how apparent the chorus effect is. You want it in mono or in stereo. And then the low cut and high cut, again, very similar to Shaper. It's just cutting and the high cut, low cutting and high cutting the effect itself. With that being said there, guys, we move on to the delay, which I don't think it needs much explanation. You know, with the ping pong on, you're always going to have it so that it never sounds like a basic delay. What that means is that you're going to have it boop, left and right. Increase wideness on it and you'll hear it. Higher feedback means the effect happens more often, so it sticks around longer. You can see higher. Dun, 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 dun. The rate is going to have to do with the modulation here. So again, remember, whenever you see a rate and modulate, it's just meaning at what speed are we going to modulate the delay itself, not the sound, but the delay. So we can modulate for a little bit. Fast. And you can see it's cool to use it for certain things for sure, to give a little bit of change to it. Now the color, think of it as an EQ knob. The higher frequencies you want, lower frequencies to the left. That's all it is. Then we have the times for delay left and right, which you'll see over here in the window. It's still going with high frequency. So this controls the time on the left and the right, and then sync makes it so that it's in beat. So 1/4, 1/2. But if you take it off, it's going to be based on just time now. So usually I leave the sync on these guys unless you're doing specific delays that you want to do. Now the last one we have is the reverb. And the reverb is going to have a couple of things that you're going to see in almost every reverb. First off, it's a plate reverb, which means it's 2-dimensional. The next thing is that you can sync this, and now the pre-delay will be put in a spot where you can kind of say, all right, I want this to happen half a beat after the sound plays, or 1/8 of a beat. So you can see that the sync changes that timing parameter now. The dampness has to do with the frequency of the sound, how much high frequencies you're going to let out. And the color also has to do with that. So high frequencies, nothing comes out because I have a high dampness, you can kind of see there. But if we lower this down, you can kind of see this controls our high frequencies there. With dampness, we tame those high frequencies so that they're not so bright. And then color down gives you more of the lows. And then the wideness has to do with the wideness of the reverb itself. Do you want it in the stereo field or in the mono field? And then decay time is how long it sticks around. And then the pre-delay, again, is useful for, let's say you want a sound to hit, then the reverb comes in. It's good for that so that the sound doesn't get muddied. But other than that, guys, those are going to be the effects. As we move along this course towards the end, we're going to be making sounds. So in that area, we're going to be making a lot of sounds, and I'll talk more about these effects and how to use them differently to get really cool kind of experimental sounds out of them. But with that being said, guys, I wanted to get this video out quick for you guys. It's almost Christmas time, so I hope that you guys are having a very happy Christmas. I wanted to get this video out before I went to the mall with my girlfriend. So hopefully you guys learned something. Leave a comment if you enjoyed it, leave a like, and I'll see you guys next time, ninjas. I appreciate those of you guys that are following this course. It's not that many of you, but it goes to show how many people are willing to invest their time and their passion when it comes to it. All right, guys, you take care, and you guys have an amazing day.